In the summer of 1845, 129 men sailed north into the Arctic aboard two of the most advanced ships the British Empire had ever built. They carried 3 years of food, libraries of books, fine china, silver cutlery engraved with their initials. They were seen one last time by a passing whaling ship waiting for the ice to open, and then they were never seen alive again. Every single one of them would die out there, slowly, over the course of years, in a way so disturbing that when the truth finally surfaced, Victorian England refused to believe it. This is the story of the Franklin expedition and of what really happened on the ice. To understand how it went so wrong, you have to understand how certain they were that it would go right. By 1845, Britain ruled the seas, and there was one prize left that had eluded every explorer for 300 years: the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the frozen top of the world, connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific. Whoever found it would rewrite the map of global trade. The man chosen to lead the expedition was Sir John Franklin. He was 59 years old, considered too old by some, but he was experienced, respected, and desperate for one last great voyage. His 2 ships were called the Erebus and the Terror, named fittingly after the Greek god of darkness and the concept of dread. They had reinforced hulls, steam engines, heated cabins. They were, for their time, nearly unsinkable. On the 19th of May, 1845, they left England to the cheers of a confident nation. In July, near Baffin Bay, 2 whaling ships spotted them, moored to an iceberg, waiting. That was the last time any European saw them alive. At first, no one worried. Arctic expeditions were expected to vanish for a year or 2. But 1 year passed, then 2, then 3. By 1848, England began to panic. The Admiralty launched what would become one of the largest search efforts in history. Dozens of ships, enormous rewards, a search that would stretch across more than a decade, and, in a grim irony, kill more men searching than had been lost on the expedition itself. For years, they found nothing but silence and ice. And then, piece by piece, the Arctic began to give up its secrets. First, 3 graves on a tiny, wind-scoured place called Beechey Island. 3 of Franklin's men, buried neatly in the permafrost during that first winter. The careful burials told searchers something important. In the beginning, there had still been order, discipline, ceremony. Whatever destroyed this expedition, it hadn't happened all at once. Then came the testimony no one wanted to hear. Local Inuit, people who had survived in this landscape for thousands of years, told searchers they had encountered the men, or rather, what was left of them. Dozens of white men dragging bows and sledges across the ice, starving, their faces black, barely able to walk, falling as they marched, dying where they fell. And the Inuit described something else, something about the bodies they later found. They said the men, at the end, had eaten each other. When the Inuit account reached England, the nation recoiled. It was reported by an explorer named John Ray, and when he published what he'd been told, he was savaged for it. The idea that noble British sailors, the pride of the empire, could descend into cannibalism was unthinkable. Charles Dickens himself wrote furious essays attacking the claim, insisting the savages must be lying. England chose the comfortable story over the true one. But the ice does not lie, and more than a century later, science caught up. In the 1980s and beyond, researchers exhumed the frozen bodies on Beechey Island. The permafrost had preserved them so perfectly that their faces were still recognizable, their eyes still open, after nearly 140 years. The tests revealed a cascade of horrors, dangerously high levels of lead, likely from the crude soldering on their own tin food supply, slowly poisoning them as they ate. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, scurvy, and on bones later recovered from the march route, the ones the men had carried with them as they died, clear-cut marks, knife marks, the kind you make when you are separating flesh from bone. The Inuit had been telling the truth the entire time. The final picture is this: the ships became trapped in the ice off King William Island and never broke free. The men waited through winter after winter as their food poisoned them and their bodies failed. Eventually, in a last act of desperation, over 100 of them abandoned the ships and set out on foot, hauling lifeboats across the frozen sea, trying to walk hundreds of miles to safety. None of them made it. They died strung out across the ice in a slow, staggering line, and the last survivors, with nothing left, did the only thing that might buy them another day. For over a century and a half, the two ships themselves remained lost, a mystery inside the mystery. Where were the Erebus and the Terror? Then, guided in part by Inuit oral history that had been passed down for generations, the same testimony England once dismissed, searchers finally found them. The Erebus was discovered in 2014, the Terror in 2016, both sitting upright on the seafloor, remarkably intact in the cold, dark water where they had gone down. Divers who entered the Terror described it as eerily preserved, plates still on shelves, bottles still standing, a ghost ship, frozen in the moment its crew walked away from it, out onto the ice, to die. The men of the Franklin expedition sailed north as the peak of the most powerful empire on Earth. They had the best ships, the best equipment, the certainty that nature could be conquered by enough steel and enough confidence. The ice did not care. Every advantage they carried, the engraved silver, the libraries, the pride of a nation, meant nothing against the cold. In the end, the same men who left to shearing crowds died anonymous, scattered, and forgotten in a place that would keep their secret for 150 years. There's an old idea worth sitting with here, that the most dangerous moment is not when you are weak, but when you are certain you cannot fail. The Arctic has swallowed a great many certain men. If you made it this far, the channel is built on stories like this one, the forgotten ones, the ones the ice keeps. Stay for the next.